Hey everybody, sorry my slide is not looking very professional here. It was not my intention to give you one that was in progress. We're going to be talking about reading comprehension and fluency. Again, these are things that are taught in elementary school, but these skills start to become more a part of our secondary classrooms as well. So reading comprehension is based again on that phonemic awareness, the decoding, the fluency, and the vocabulary. All of them come together to support comprehension and are necessary for reading skills to improve. Comprehension is that desired outcome. That's the goal of pulling meaning from the text. So my question for you is, if you know the words and you know what they mean, does that mean that you comprehend the text? So here's a list. We know the word are, between, consists, continuously might be a challenging word for some of our students, corresponding. But we know what curve and draws and point and table, we know all of these words, right? But what's interesting, when we put them together, maybe we lose a little sense of understanding. Here we have a basic college math book from 1945, and it says, if the known relation between the variables consists of a table of corresponding values, the graph consists only of the corresponding set of isolated points. And if the variables are known to vary continuously, one often draws a curve to show the variation. Now, if you have a background in mathematics, then you would understand that we're talking about parabolas, those graphed curves, and this would make sense. But without that background, without an awareness, this could be almost like reading a foreign language. That's something we have to be alert to for our students, that if they have no knowledge of the topic that we're reading about, they might not be able to understand the words, even if they know what each of the words individually means. So background knowledge is critical to understanding a given text. And if students have no knowledge of the material, it becomes much more difficult to access the text, even if the reading level is low enough on a decoding standard. Asking your students what they know before they begin is a really good way for you to gauge what their understanding might be and to even prime their brains before reading. So sometimes bringing up a little bit about a topic can help to activate their prior knowledge and get them going so that when they read, they have some awareness of what's going on. I do have some reading materials for you in one of the packets. I think it's the one with the balanced literacy on the front. So you may want to try these activities. I think they'd be useful to you. Consider reading the house and underlining what you think is important. And then come back to it and underline what you think a robber would find important. And then come back to it and underline what you think a home buyer would find important. I think you'll see that a purpose for reading changes what you pay attention to. This happens as well for our students. They need us to point out what they should care about in a text. Oftentimes, without a purpose, they're really lost. When you set a purpose for your readers, you explain to them what they should pay attention to, and they can then ask you where they need help. So telling a student to read this textbook section and then find the main idea and 4 supporting details, or to read this persuasive speech and find out what the argument is that the author was trying to make, or asking if there's any errors in their thinking, or suggesting to a student reading a chapter book, a novel, that the elements, whatever elements of the chapter didn't we talk about in our lecture? Which things did we miss that the character did or said? These purposes for reading will help students understand what to pay attention to in an ocean of content that sometimes they find pushes them over the edge. A couple of things to know. I highly recommend this book by Chris Tovani. She is a skilled reading instructor, and for me, the way she tells stories about her classroom, I just find it really helpful, and I can see those students. She has great suggestions. She says that sometimes in our classrooms we have fake readers, kids that don't fully comprehend the material, but they know how to navigate the classroom. They know how to listen to classmates and guess well, and they know to wait for us. We get impatient, and we'll just give them the answer or support them enough that we'll hand it to them. Those students they pretend to read. They fake through reading. We have another group of students who can decode just fine, and they, might be beautiful actually in their oral reading, but they don't engage their brain while they're doing that decoding. They're really just sounding out words and never getting to the point of comprehension. Those kids are called word callers. They read the words, but they don't let them sink in, and they don't put them together to understand meaning. So Chris Giovanni and others suggest that there are a set of skills that good readers do, and I don't know if this is in your handouts or not. I will make it available in Moodle for you. A list of things, specifically those terms in green there: visualize, question, predict, connect, summarize. These are reading strategies, reading skills that when students are taught explicitly to do them, it boosts their comprehension. So once the students have their decoding skills down, they know how to sound out words, they need practice with these things that good readers do. What's interesting is those of us who are good readers, we just do them automatically, and we flip in between visualizing and questioning and predicting and connecting. We don't have to have someone say, all right, read the next chapter and write down 3 questions. We do it, and we check our thinking as we go. Students who are struggling need us to teach them how to visualize or question or predict. They need us to show them what those skills look like. So one of those ways is called think aloud strategy, and it is very common now. In math class they call them math talks, but in reading we still call them think alouds most times. And it's cognitive strategy instruction, which we've talked about in general methods, and it suggests that you should demonstrate for your students what's going on inside your brain while you're reading. When they look at us, they can see our eyes moving, they can see pages turning, they can even see us saying the exact words, but they don't know the thinking skills that are happening inside. And so when you do a think aloud strategy, you share those internal thoughts. What's happening in your brain while you're reading? You model for them. Oh, I'm reading this, and this is what it makes me think of. So when you have your students share their internal thoughts on paper or in demonstration, maybe on little post-it notes, as they read, tell them to comment on what they're thinking. You will get to see what their strategies might be. But remember, first, you have to teach that. What were you thinking while you were reading? All right. Comprehension summary, and I skipped a few slides there. I apologize. They shouldn't have been in there. A few things to remember about comprehension. First, you've got to watch for kids who are sneaking by. Watch for those fake readers. Watch for those word callers. Secondly, set a purpose for reading. Make sure you're telling students why we're reading what we are and what skills maybe they should choose while they're reading. Teach students what good readers do. That good readers do summarize and connect a text to their experiences or another text. Those set of skills, visualize, question, predict, connect, and summarize, critical to what good readers do. And then require students to engage with the text, not just hunting for keywords. The comprehension questions that are often assigned in a textbook are just really easy to fake. So it's fine to use them, but recognize that students, just because they're answering those comprehension questions correctly, doesn't mean they're reading. I remember scanning for bold words, scanning for the right question, and just copying it down without ever actually reading the text. One way to check for comprehension, and actually the number one way, just have a conversation with your students. It's hard to do when you have classes of 35 and 40 sometimes at the high school level, but recognize that the more that you're talking with your students about the text, the more likely it is you'll know what their level of comprehension is. All right, on to fluency. Again, fluency is the pacing of your reading, the ability to read with a pace that is swift enough that it boosts comprehension. And we have lots of strategies that we use in the classroom, but there are 2 that I would say you should not use. Popcorn reading is where one student will read, you'll call on them, and then they get to say popcorn and call in another student who's supposed to pick up the text right where they've left. The issue here is that students end up paying attention out of fear. they are panicked that they will be called on and will look stupid for not knowing where they're at. They're not paying attention to the text. They're paying attention to where you are in the text so that they don't get caught. And then we have students who will then choose to use this strategy, this reading, as a weapon. So they will look around the room to see who looks nervous, who looks off guard, who's not paying attention, call on them just to embarrass them in front of the class. It's not a great strategy to have. Round robin reading is similar, but a little less threatening. Students will know that they're going to read the next paragraph and they'll spot the order you're going in, whether you're going down the rows or around the room. And oftentimes they'll just count ahead to their paragraph to be alert to the fact, is there anything there I don't know how to pronounce, and they'll actually be practicing their paragraph instead of listening to the readings of their peers. So make sure that you avoid round robin reading and popcorn reading. They're not the worst things ever, but I think there are better strategies to use instead. It's only fair that I give you some of those suggestions. Make sure that you're letting volunteers read. Very few jobs require oral readers, and so let the kids who are comfortable with that do it. Let them read aloud. And make sure that then your class is really safe for the struggling readers. They don't have to read out loud for the class. It's embarrassing and stressful, and they don't have to do it. You can read. You're a good reader, and I know you need to save your voice sometimes, so maybe use a CD or podcast or audio recording that you find. But students benefit from hearing good readers, and so definitely use professional sources if you can. And then repeated reading. Sometimes students need to have us read and then they need to read it again. Repeated reading suggests that they practice a passage. Reader's theater is another option there. We just want students to improve on their fluency by practicing. Other things to do for fluency: silent reading time. If students are actually reading, this is a super positive activity, having students read silently. Most of our struggling readers are not reading at home, so we need to provide that practice time if they're going to improve at all. And lastly, I mentioned this already, but choral reading or reader's theater, it's naturally engaging, and it allows students the chance to read dramatically, gives them a sense of audience, and I found really strong outcomes from choral reading and reader's theater. So recognize that the only thing that really increases fluency is practice. Students have to continue to practice reading if they're going to improve their fluency. All right, a few comprehension questions, I guess. I'm going to leave those alone. Consider whether you want to think these through to improve your own comprehension of this presentation. Choose a strategy, explain how to use it and how it would be helpful, one of the comprehension strategies. Do your fluency. What's difficult for teachers in assessing reading fluency? And then what other reading components should be considered? It's comprehension. And then what are strategies that teachers can use in their classroom to promote reading fluency? I showed you some they shouldn't, but which ones should they? Which ones should you incorporate? That's it. I hope that you have a great night. If you have questions about comprehension and fluency, please let me know.